For this set of lecture slides, we're going to be looking at externalities, common pool resources, and the tragedy of the commons. We're going to start with externalities. You've likely learned these a little bit in principles. Um, Externalities we refer to as either negative or positive, so they're either a cost or a benefit that impacts a party not directly involved in an exchange. A negative externality is when there's a external cost imposed. So, for example, air pollution is a negative externality, traffic congestion is a negative externality, secondhand smoke is a negative externality. All of these involve other people making decisions and it imposing a cost on someone else. When you think about traffic congestion, every time you get on the road to drive, you're adding to the number of cars in the road, right? So you're causing there to be more traffic for someone else. And in your decision to drive or not, you're not considering them. A positive externality is a benefit conferred on someone not involved in an exchange. So these are things like vaccination. Bees are often considered a positive externality. When we think about vaccinations, if I get vaccinated for the seasonal flu, what that means is that my decision to vaccinate myself actually increases your um, protection to the flu, right? You're less likely to get it because I've decided to get the vaccine. So in that way, vaccines provide positive externalities, and the more people who have them, the more protected everyone is. As we think about externalities, sometimes we refer to them as social costs or social benefits above and beyond what the private costs and benefits are. And so when we have externalities, we're going to have those social costs and social benefits exceeding or being less than the private costs and benefits of a activity or a good. So social costs are going to involve, or we define them as the cost of a exchange to society. And so we'll add both the private costs and the external costs of that good or exchange. Um, External marginal cost is going to refer directly to that externality. So it's the cost imposed on a third party when an additional unit of a good is produced or consumed. A social benefit is going to be the benefit of a transaction or an exchange to society. And we'll find that by adding the private benefit to the external benefit. And that external marginal benefit, again, is our externality, and it's the benefit conferred on a third party when an additional unit of the good or product is produced or consumed. Okay, so we can actually write these definitions in using a math equation. So we could say that the social costs of doing something equal the private costs plus the external marginal cost. That's the externality again. A shorthand for this is usually SMC for social marginal costs, MC for private marginal costs, or we could do PMC, and then external marginal cost is usually EMC. Okay. For social benefits, we would say that the social benefit of something equals the private benefit plus the external marginal benefit, which again is that external externality. So another way we could abbreviate this is we have the social marginal benefit, SMB, equal to the marginal benefit or private marginal benefit, PMB or just MB, plus the external marginal benefit, so EMB. All right, and we'll use these relationships in the practice problems that are to come. Now let's look at how you graph externalities here. So starting with a negative externality, what we have here is the market for electricity. It's perfectly competitive. So we have the supply curve in this market, the market demand, and we have shown here that there is an external marginal cost of electricity production, right? It's likely pollution. So there's an external marginal cost of producing electricity. And what that means is that the social marginal cost, right, is going to exceed the private marginal cost of producing energy. And so if we want to consider those external marginal costs, if we want to consider what the efficient amount of electricity is, we want to add that external marginal cost to the private marginal cost to get our social marginal cost, okay? And so what this shows us is that when these external marginal costs of production, right, in this case, again, it's likely pollution, are not considered, we get more electricity produced than is actually efficient, all right? So we see that the social costs of the milliwatt hours between Q star and Q market exceed the marginal benefit, the private benefit that people get from that electricity. And so we have this overproduction and we call it the deadweight loss due to an externality, okay? And so if our firms considered the external marginal cost, they would actually reduce the amount they produce, and the price for the good would be higher, facilitating that limitation of output. For positive externalities, what we see is actually that goods are underproduced. So we can think about the market for college degrees, more generally the market for education. There is some external marginal benefit to education. Economics research has shown very clearly that the more of a population that is educated, the more wealthy it tends to be, the healthier it tends to be, the happier people tend to be, the less crime there is. And so there's this benefit from education beyond what the private individual gets. All right. That's that external marginal benefit. And so when people are making consumption decisions, they're only considering their private marginal benefit, that demand for the good that they have for themselves. And our market is just going to land where the private marginal cost, what it costs, say, universities to provide these degrees against people's marginal valuation of them privately, getting us a market price and output below what is actually efficient, right? Socially, because of these knock-on benefits that come from education, additional units of education, additional, in this case, degrees, the difference between Q star and Q market, they're actually valued much more than it costs them to be provided. And so we have deadweight loss here from underproduction, right? People would rather that there be more provided than there is socially. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so that is our initial introduction to externalities, and in the next video, we'll pick up with what is the efficient level of pollution.